Babysitter Blues. Alright, so here I am, hunched over my desk at 2 a.m., cigarette burning in the ashtray, typing this out like a man possessed. Maybe I am. By this secret, anyway. By her. Alice Mason. 19 years old, with hair the color of fire and a smile that could make a saint curse. I'm Robert Hawk, 38, married for 12 years, vice president at a textile firm, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was a decent man. Then she walked into my life, and decency went out the window. It started in June, right after my wife, Margaret, decided she needed cultural enrichment and began spending every other night at the symphony or some fancy art gallery. Our 2 boys, Tommy and Billy, were driving me crazy after work, sneaking cookies before dinner, arguing over who broke the radio, and I needed help. So I placed an ad in the paper: responsible young woman needed for childcare. Must be reliable, discreet. Alice answered it, showing up at our doorstep in a starched white blouse and a plaid skirt that hugged her waist just right. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, but a few curls had escaped, framing her face like they belonged there. I'm from Cedar Falls, she said, shaking my hand with a grip firmer than I expected. I know how to handle kids, and messy situations. Her eyes lingered on me as she said it, a little smirk playing at the corner of her mouth, like she knew something I didn't. The first encounter was innocent enough, or so I told myself. She'd been working for a week, and I came home early from the office to find her in the living room, humming to herself as she folded the boys' laundry. She was wearing a thin cotton blouse, the kind that lets the light through, and when she bent over to pick up a fallen sock, I saw the outline of her bra through the fabric. I cleared my throat, and she turned, blushing like she'd been caught doing something wrong. Mr. Hawk, she said, holding the sock to her chest. I didn't hear you come in. Her voice was soft, but there was a teasing lilt to it, like she had heard me, like she'd been waiting for me to see. I mumbled something about needing to finish a report and fled to my study, but I couldn't focus. All I could think about was the way her skin had flushed when our eyes met, the curve of her hip as she'd bent over. I felt like a teenager, sweating through my shirt, ashamed of myself but unable to stop. The second time was 2 nights later. Margaret was at a gala, and Alice had put the boys to bed. I was in the study, nursing a scotch, when she knocked on the door. The boys are asleep, she said, stepping in without waiting for me to answer. She was wearing the same blouse, but this time the top button was undone, just enough to show a sliver of her collarbone. I made tea, she said, setting a cup on my desk. You look tense, Mr. Hawk. Her hand brushed my shoulder as she stepped back, and I nearly spilled my drink. Call me Robert, I said, too quickly. She smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and leaned against the desk, her hip inches from my arm. All right, Robert, she said. What's got you so wound up? Business? Or something, closer to home? Her voice dropped on the last part, and I could smell the vanilla of her shampoo, the faint scent of soap. I opened my mouth to answer, but she pushed off the desk, leaving a trail of warmth where she'd been leaning. Sleep well, she said, glancing back at me over her shoulder as she left. I didn't sleep at all. The third encounter was the night I knew I was in trouble. It was raining, a thick, sticky summer rain, and Margaret was out of town visiting her sister. Alice had put the boys to bed and was in the kitchen, washing dishes. I came downstairs for a glass of water and found her there, her sleeves rolled up, humming again. Her blouse was damp from the splashing water, clinging to her breasts, and when she turned, she didn't bother to adjust it. They miss their mother, she said, drying her hands on a towel. But I think someone else does too. She took a step closer, and I could see the freckles on her nose, the way her lips parted when she breathed. Alice, I said, my voice hoarse. We shouldn't, but she cut me off, pressing a finger to my lips. Shoo, she said. You don't have to say anything. I can see it in your eyes, the way you watch me when you think I'm not looking. Her finger trailed down my cheek, to my neck, and I shivered. Before I could react, we heard Tommy crying upstairs, and she stepped back, all innocence again. "I should go check on him," she said, but her smile was wicked as she passed me. I stood there, trembling, staring at the spot where her finger had touched my lips, and I knew I was no longer in control. The fourth time was deliberate. She started leaving notes, small, folded pieces of paper in my briefcase, under my coffee cup, even in the pocket of my suit jacket. "You looked handsome in your tie today," one said. "I wonder what you'd do if I kissed you," another read. I should have thrown them away, told her to stop, but I kept them, hidden in a drawer in my study, like a guilty treasure. Then, one evening, after the boys were asleep, I found a note on my pillow: "Meet me in the library at midnight. Come alone." I almost didn't go. I stood outside the library door for 5 minutes, sweating, telling myself to turn back, to be the man Margaret thought I was. But something in me snapped. I opened the door. She was sitting in the armchair by the fireplace, wearing a silk robe, Margaret's robe, I realized with a jolt. It was too big for her, slipping off one shoulder, revealing the strap of her nightgown beneath. "Took you long enough," she said, her voice low. I closed the door behind me, and she stood up, letting the robe fall to the floor. Underneath, she was wearing a white nightgown so sheer I could see the outline of her nipples, the shadow between her legs. "Alice," I breathed, unable to look away. She walked over to me, her bare feet silent on the carpet, and took my hand, placing it on her waist. "I've been waiting for you to stop pretending," she said. "I see the way you look at me, Robert. You want me. Admit it." Her hand slid up my chest, to my neck, pulling me closer. I should have pushed her away, but instead, I groaned and kissed her, hard, all the frustration and longing pouring out. Her mouth was warm, eager, and she pressed herself against me, making me feel the hardness I'd been denying for weeks. Just as my hand slid under her nightgown, up her thigh, we heard the front door open, Margaret, home early from her trip. Alice jumped back, grabbing the robe, and I scrambled to fix my tie, my heart pounding. "Go to your room," I hissed, and she fled, leaving me to face my wife, the taste of her still on my lips. The fifth encounter was the pool incident. It was a sweltering July afternoon, and the boys were splashing in the backyard pool. Alice was sitting on the edge, her legs dangling in the water, wearing a red bathing suit that made her hair look like flame. I came outside with a stack of reports, trying to work, but my eyes kept drifting to the way the wet fabric clung to her breasts, the water droplets running down her collarbone. "Want to cool off, Mr. Hawk?" she asked, dipping her hand in the water and flicking droplets at me. I shook my head, but she stood up, shaking her hair like a mermaid, and walked over, her suit dripping onto the grass. "You're sweating," she said, reaching out to undo the top button of my shirt. I caught her wrist, but she just smiled, leaning in so her wet chest brushed against my arm. "Relax," she murmured. "No one's watching." Her other hand slid into my pocket, pulling out the latest note she'd left there that morning: "I think about you in the shower. Do you think about me too?" I groaned, pulling her into the pool house, slamming the door behind us. The air was hot and humid, filled with the smell of chlorine and her perfume. She pressed me against the wall, her mouth on mine, her wet suit sticking to both of us as she ground her hips into me. My hands slid down to her backside, lifting her up, and she wrapped her legs around me, gasping into the kiss as I pressed her against the cold concrete wall. Just as I fumbled with the tie of her bathing suit, we heard the boys shouting for Alice, splashing nearby. She grinned, nipping my lip as she slid down, adjusting her suit. "We'll finish this later," she said, slipping out the door like nothing had happened, leaving me alone with the evidence of my desire and the distant sound of her laughter. The sixth encounter was the night Margaret threw a dinner party. I'd begged her not to, too on edge with Alice in the house, but she insisted. "It's good for your image, Robert." Alice was in charge of the boys, but she kept appearing in the dining room, accidentally brushing against me as she refilled glasses or cleared plates. She was wearing a black dress that clung to her curves, her hair up in a twist that showed off her neck, and every time she leaned over the table, I could see the swell of her breasts. Halfway through the meal, I felt something brush my leg under the table, her foot, sliding up my calf, past my knee, to the inside of my thigh. I nearly dropped my fork, shooting her a warning glance, but she just smiled at the guests, innocent as anything. Later, when the guests were in the living room, she slipped a note into my hand, "Meet me in the pantry now." I waited 5 minutes, then excused myself, heart pounding. The pantry was pitch black, but I felt her hands on me immediately, pulling me close, her mouth hungry, her fingers undoing my belt. "Alice, someone could," I started, but she cut me off. "Shoo," she said, guiding my hand under her dress, letting me feel the heat of her through her panties. "You've wanted this since the first day, Robert. Admit it." I didn't need to admit it, my body did it for me, hard and urgent against her. She pushed me against a shelf of canned goods, the metal cans clanging as she dropped to her knees, and I had to bite my lip to keep from moaning as her hands worked me through my trousers. Just as she pulled me free, we heard Margaret call my name from the hallway. Alice jumped up, fixing her dress, while I fumbled to zip up, heart racing. "Coming," I called, voice shaky. Alice opened the pantry door, stepping out first, smoothing her hair. "Mr. Hawk needed help finding the napkins," she said to Margaret, who eyed us suspiciously but said nothing. Later that night, Margaret turned to me in bed and said, "That girl is trouble, Robert. We should let her go." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because she was right, and I didn't want to let her go. The payoff came a week later, on a night when Margaret was staying over at a friend's house. Alice had put the boys to bed and joined me in the study, wearing a dress so tight it might as well have been painted on. "I want you to show me what you've been thinking about," she said, sitting on the edge of my desk, crossing her legs so her skirt rode up. "No more hiding, Robert. I can't take it anymore." I didn't need to be told twice. I stood up, towering over her, and cupped her face in my hands, kissing her deeply, letting all the pent-up desire take over. She moaned, wrapping her arms around my neck, and I lifted her off the desk, carrying her to the couch, never breaking the kiss. I undressed her slowly, savoring the way her skin felt under my hands, the way she trembled when I kissed her neck, her collarbone, lower, lower. Her dress fell to the floor, and she was wearing nothing underneath, her body warm and eager beneath me. I kissed every freckle, every curve, until she was gasping my name, arching into me, her hands pulling at my clothes. When I finally satisfied her completely, it was like nothing I'd ever known, raw, urgent, right, even as every part of me screamed that it was wrong. She clung to me afterward, her head on my chest, and I stared at the ceiling, listening to her heartbeat, knowing there was no going back. But the danger only made it hotter. We started meeting in the warehouse district near my office, in a rented room above a pawn shop. It was seedy, but it was ours, no risk of the boys walking in, no Margaret coming home early. There, she let me take her however I wanted, her whispers in my ear driving me wild. "Show me how much you need me, Robert. Don't hold back." I didn't. I pushed her against the wall, lifted her onto the rickety table, kissed her until we were both breathless, her moans echoing in the empty room. Once, a car horn blared below, and we froze, laughing nervously, but the thrill of almost being caught only made us hungrier for each other. The final straw was the night Margaret found the notes. I'd left the drawer in my study open, and there they were, every single one, stacked neatly like a confession. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with eyes like ice. "Is it her?" she asked, and I couldn't lie. I didn't have the strength. She left that night, taking the boys to her sister's, and I was left alone with the silence and the smell of Alice's perfume that lingered on my shirts. Alice didn't know. She showed up the next day, smiling, oblivious, and I had to tell her. "Margaret knows," I said, and her smile faded. She's leaving me. But instead of fear, there was a flicker of triumph in her eyes. Then be with me, she said, stepping closer. Leave her. We can, I cut her off. It's not that simple, I said, but my voice was weak. She pressed against me, her hand sliding under my shirt, and I groaned, hating myself for wanting her even as my life fell apart. Make it simple, she whispered, and I did. I lifted her onto the kitchen table, her legs wrapping around me, and we took each other right there, rough and desperate, like it might be the last time. And maybe it was. Now, I'm waiting for the divorce papers, for Margaret to take everything, my marriage, my family, my reputation. Alice is gone too, she left after that last time, saying she needed to think, but I know she won't come back. And yet, I don't hate her. I don't even hate myself, not really. Because for the first time in years, I felt alive, desired, seen. Margaret saw the man I was supposed to be, Alice saw the man I was. This is my confession, I let a girl young enough to be my daughter seduce me, and I didn't just let her, I wanted her to. I wanted her so badly it hurt, and now that I've had her, I'll never be the same. Maybe that's the punishment, isn't it? Not getting caught, but knowing that I'm capable of this, that I'm no better than the men I've judged. I don't know what happens next. Maybe Margaret will find out the full extent of it, maybe she'll destroy me in court, maybe I'll end up alone. But I can't regret it. Not the way her hair felt between my fingers, not the way she made me feel like I could be more than just a title and a suit. Alice Mason ruined me, and God help me, I'd let her do it again. Is that how desire works? It doesn't care about right or wrong. It just is. And maybe that's the scariest part, I don't want to fight it anymore. I want to keep falling, even if it destroys me. So here's my secret, I let my red-haired babysitter drive me to ruin, and I can't even hate her for it. I can only sit here, typing these words, and hope that somewhere, she's thinking about me too, remembering the way we burned together, and knowing that some secrets, once released, can never be put back.